Hello, my name is Dr. Karen Soini, and I am the Assistant Director of Curriculum and Instruction for the Renton School District. Thank you for viewing this short presentation. In this presentation, we will be talking about the revisions we've made to the elementary report card for this school year. In this presentation, I'll be sharing the definition of standards-based grading and explain in detail why the report card was changed. We'll be talking about the differences between a 4, 3, 2, and a 1 grading scale versus an A, B, C, D grading scale. And our district content facilitators will be sharing with you what the subheadings mean for each content area. And finally, we'll end with some good questions that you could ask your child's teacher at parent-teacher conferences. Standards are very useful. One way that they're useful is they help teachers and students focus on a learning objective. These learning objectives are taken directly from our standards. Standards-based grading is also useful when teachers are conferring with the students. What you see before you is a learning progression. If a teacher, for example, sees a student who is exhibiting many of the behaviors that are typical for second grade, but perhaps are missing a few, a teacher can use this progression to help them see where they need to move to, as well as if they want to move up a level, the teacher can coach the student in that direction. Standards-based grading is also useful for students themselves because it gives students a chance to self-assess. You can see before you a narrative writing checklist for first and second grade, so a student can look at their own work, say for example regarding the lead, and they can assess whether or not they tried to make a beginning for their story, whether they have done that, whether they're starting to or not yet. And then just like the learning progression on the previous slide, the student can look ahead and see, what do I need to do a little bit more complete? Standards are also very useful for grading, of course. What you see before you is a part of a rubric for a first grade writing prompt. Here, the columns 1, 2, 3, 4 do not relate to grade levels, however they relate to degree of understanding. A teacher can use a rubric to very objectively score a student's writing. Ken O'Connor speaks about 4 aspects of effective grading. One is that it's consistent, that teacher to teacher in a particular grade level are grading in the same way against the same standards. That it's accurate, that it's meaningful, and most importantly, supportive of learning, so that it's something that helps students know where they are on the learning trajectory. In Renton, our teachers are using 6 principles for standards-based grading this trimester. First is that grades are based on clearly specified learning goals. Second, that grades are not influenced by things such as late work or neatness or effort or behavior. We want to keep those things separate. Grading is based on end of trimester expectations, meaning if there is an end of year expectation, for example in kindergarten, to count to 100, we wouldn't expect that at the end of the first trimester. The only exception with that in Renton is science, because we have kits that rotate, and therefore a complete kit will not return to a student, so it's end of year expectations. Students are assessed as they learn, meaning they're given feedback as they learn, but the grading only happens after learning has occurred. The beauty of this is that we don't penalize kids for practice. We let practice be practice so that we can make mistakes, and then towards the end of the term is when we do the actual grading. In standards-based grading, one piece of work does not determine a final grade. We use multiple pieces of evidence. And finally, the student's most recent work is what's used to determine the final grade, not an average. When you average the grades, all the learning that has taken place gets washed out. Why were these changes made to the report card? A couple of reasons. First is our state has adopted new standards. We have adopted the Common Core state standards in mathematics and English language arts. Therefore, our curriculum has changed. So, with a change in the standards and a change in the curriculums, naturally our report card needed to be revised as well. Our learning standards in science and social studies are still our Washington state standards, so you'll see very little change in those. Most of us, when we were growing up, got letter grades, A's, B's, C's, and D's. And we don't use those in a standards-based grading system because those are based on averages. And when we calculate averages, we lose clarity about what those grades actually mean in relationship to learning. So let's talk about the 4-3-2-1 scale. The numbers are associated with labels: exceeding standards, meeting standards, below standards, and well below standards. A student earning a 3 is meeting standards. That is exactly where we want our students to be. So what that means is that students are consistently meeting requirements for proficient work, and they demonstrate grade level knowledge for this point in the year. And then you can go up and down from that standard up to a 4 for exceeding standards. These are given out very rarely. Below standards means that the student is approaching, is just about there. They meet some of the requirements but not all. And well below standards means that they're meeting very few requirements. The important thing to remember is that a 4 does not equal an A. A 3 does not equal a B, and so on. They mean very different things. There are other notations on the report card for you to be aware of. If your child has an IE in any of the categories, that means there's insufficient evidence, meaning perhaps that student hasn't completed enough work or the student has been absent, so the teacher just doesn't have enough evidence to make a determination of a grade. An A is a little bit different. It means not assessed during this reporting period. So not all standards are assessed in every trimester. And so if that one's not assessed or taught, then it's not going to appear on the report card. And if there is an asterisk by the letter, or pardon me, if there's an asterisk by the number, that means it's a modified standard. And what that means is the student is on an IEP. So they may be earning, for example, a 3, meeting standards, but it may not be the grade level standard. It would be the standard that they're working on in their IEP. The comments on the report card are a valuable part of the report card. It allows the teacher to really personalize it to the student. It allows the teacher to elaborate on the quantitative part of the report card. So if a student is, for example, getting a 2 in a particular area, then the teacher can say what the student's strengths are in that area and then offer some suggestions of what they might need to do to bring it up to a 3, for example. It's also a good place for teachers to actually put the data that they used to draw their grades from. In a standards-based report card, effort, work habits, and community skills are assessed, but they're assessed separately from the academics. They're not graded on a 4-3-2-1 scale, rather a plus, equals, or minus. At the bottom of the report card, you'll see work habits and community skills. We have adjusted some of these to better align with the middle school report card and the verbiage in that. and to better align with our second step curriculum that is teaching many of these behaviors. Effort is embedded within each content area so that a teacher can call out a student's excellent effort, for example, in math, even if maybe they're earning a 2 in a part of math. It's a way for us to show that they are working hard. They just haven't reached the academic meeting standards yet. Now I will be introducing to you our district content facilitators who will be talking about what all of the subheadings mean under each content area. We'll begin with Kathy Dean talking about English Language Arts. Then Ivan Flores will speak about mathematics, and we'll end with Kelly Lowry sharing about science.
Hello, this is Kathy Dean. I'm the English Language Arts and Social Studies facilitator, and I'm going to talk to you about the English Language Arts portion of the report card. You will see on this slide that there are 5 separate areas in addition to effort: reading literature, reading informational text, reading foundational skills, writing, and language. And I'll be talking about each of these areas separately. Reading literature comprehension is assessing whether students are understanding the fiction stories that they read. We want to see that students are able to make connections between what they read and what they already know. We also want them to be thinking deeply about what is read. In addition, we look to see that students are thinking about maybe why the author wrote the story that they did, or how characters are interacting with each other. It goes beyond just thinking about the plot of the story and what's happening first, next, and last. Reading informational text comprehension is the next area on the report card, and this is our nonfiction or true or real text. We are looking to see that students accurately understand what they've read and what is written. We also look to see that they can determine the main idea and find important details of each section of the text. And then as they get older, they put those sections together to come up with a main idea for the overall part of the text. Next, we have reading foundational skills. Those are the skills that are necessary to be able to read text and decode the words that are there. We look to see if students' phonics skills are strong, meaning that they're able to grade level appropriate, know the letter names and their sounds that they make, and then putting those together to read words. Word recognition is our sight words, and those are the words that you can't really sound out to read. They're more words you have to just memorize, like the and was and there, for example. And then we have the area of fluency in this section, and that is being able to read with good accuracy and appropriate rate and expression, kind of reading like you would be talking rather than reading choppy or robot-like. There are 3 main areas of writing that are taught and assessed during the school year. Narrative is where students are writing stories. Opinion are where they're writing about their opinion and showing that they're able to back up their opinion with facts and evidence. And then informational writing is writing about true things, or kind of thinking about nonfiction writing. That might be reports on animals, or writing about space, or writing about history. We're looking to see that students can convey ideas clearly in their writing so that when the reader is reading, they understand exactly what they're saying. And we also work with the writing process, being able to plan what you're writing, revising what you're writing, and then editing at the end to come up with a clean final piece of writing. The final area is language, and that is the command of conventions of standard English grammar and usage when writing or speaking. Grammar is assessing whether you're able to speak and write using proper English grammar. Spelling is being able to spell words accurately and efficiently. Capitalization, being able to capitalize beginning of sentences and proper nouns. Punctuation includes, periods, question marks at the end of sentences, where you need semicolons or commas, that sort of thing. And then vocabulary is being able to understand grade level appropriate vocabulary, both in your speaking and in writing. Also on the report card, each grade level has an area where we need to indicate whether students are at or above grade level. So you will see that your student will either have a Y for yes or an N for no. And that's looking at all of their reading skills and seeing if they're on grade level for this time of the year. And then the next trimester, you'll also see that in the fall. At the end of the year, they'll also have that indicated.
Hello, my name is Ivan Flores, and I'm the elementary math facilitator for Renton Public Schools. Like in the English Language Arts portion of the report card, mathematics also has an effort grade. This effort grade is independent of the academic portion of the report card. Under mathematics, you will find several categories or topics. In Common Core, these are called domains. In kindergarten, you start with counting and cardinality. You have operations in algebraic thinking, numbers and operations in base 10, measurement and data, and geometry. Grades 1 and 2 have 4 domains, not having the counting and cardinality. In grades 3 through 5, you go back to having 5 domains, having added the number and operations fractions. In the following slides, I will be explaining in more detail each of those domains for all grades in K5. Counting and cardinality is a domain that occurs only in kindergarten. In counting, students learn the number sequence, being able to say the numbers in that order and memorizing that sequence, being able to count objects, and being able to touch one object each time they say one number. As they count, they also need to recognize what those symbols mean, being able to recognize a 3 as the symbol for the 3 and being able to say it out loud. Cardinality is the understanding of those numbers as quantities. So as they count and they touch one item at a time, the last number they say tells you how many are in that group, and being able to compare those groups with each other. Being able to say that 7 is greater than 3 because it has more objects than a group of 3. Operations and algebraic thinking is a domain that you will see in grades K5. Here, students are developing their understanding of the basic operations. What does it mean to add and subtract? What does it mean to multiply and divide? And what are the relationships between those operations? They use word problems in context situations to be able to deepen their understanding of those operations and the properties of those operations. In this domain also, they develop fluency with their basic facts. In K2, they work with addition, subtraction within 20, and in grades 3 through 5, they work with multiplication, division within 100. Numbers and operations in base 10 is also a domain that you will find in grades K5. In the early grades, K2, students are developing their basic understanding of the place value system, the base 10 number system, and how that system works and the patterns within it. Later, they will use that place value understanding in conjunction with their understanding of the properties of operations to add and subtract within 100 at first, and then within 1000. Similarly, students in grades 4-5 are also using their understanding of the place value system and the properties of operations to do arithmetic with multiplication and division with multi-digit numbers. This also gets extended to decimals in grades 4 and 5. Numbers and operations fractions is a domain that begins in grade 3. At first, students are trying to understand what fractions are as numbers and as quantities, and representing them in models that show parts of a whole or points in a number line. Later in grades 4 and 5, students use their understanding of the operations and their new understanding of these numbers to add and subtract fractions with like and unlike denominators, and to multiply and divide fractions. Measurement and data is the domain where you will find a lot of the supporting standards for the major work of the grade level. In early grades, they're working with context involving units of length in centimeters and inches. Grade 3, they start working with units of area to support their understanding of multiplication division, as well as units in inches that involve fractional units, which they graph in data plots that supports the work with fractions. Grades 4 extend that work with fractional units, and it also includes working with angles. And in grade 5, they also include working with three-dimensional units of volume. The geometry domain includes many of the standards that are additional to the major work of the grade level. In early grades, students begin working with shapes, looking at describing shapes by their attributes and categorizing shapes by their defining and non-defining attributes. Later, they start working with partitioning shapes into smaller parts that supports the later work of fractions. In grades 4 and 5, they start thinking about how the labels that we put on shapes can be broadened, and some of the shapes can fall under several categories based on those defining attributes. Grade 5 also includes work with the coordinate grid.
Hi, I'm Kelly Lowry, and I'm the Elementary Science and Health Facilitator. Before we begin talking about the science section of the report card, a point of clarification. Unlike other content areas, science standards are measured on the standards-based report card based on end-of-year standards. This is because we use a kit-based system to deliver content in our district, and students may not engage with the same content again beyond when they have had their kit sent or taught to their class at one point in the year. So when we look at the science section of the report card, there are 4 different areas to consider. One is systems. In this portion, students identify parts or subsystems of a larger system while learning how parts are connected and work together. For example, in 3rd grade, students learn about the structures of a plant and the importance of their functions. In inquiry, students may answer questions by conducting and comparing investigations through observations, recording data, and drawing conclusions. For example, in 5th grade, students investigate the impact of pollutants on both land and water ecosystems. With application, students use simple tools and materials and science concepts collaboratively or independently to develop solutions to problems in creative ways. For example, in 4th grade, students devise a way to protect homes or environments from the impacts of erosion and weathering of nearby waterways. And lastly, in the science domains section, which can include earth, space, life, or physical science. Across grade levels, this is the kind of content that students engage with as a part of the systems inquiry and application lenses. Most grade levels engage with life science at some point during the year, while other select grade levels engage with earth science or physical science at different times.
This is Karen Soini again, and I'm here to just wrap up our presentation. I want to leave you with a list of questions to choose from to ask at your parent-teacher conference in November. I would encourage you to think of this as a conversation where it is two-way. You ask questions of the teacher can ask questions of you. You tell the teacher about what you know about your child, and the teacher tells you what they see and know about what your child is learning. The conference is only 20 to 30 minutes long, so you certainly won't be able to ask all these questions, and they all may not resonate with you. But I encourage you to go in prepared to ask 1 or 2 of these questions. Finally, I'd like to direct you towards the report card companion. You'll receive this at your parent-teacher conference along with the report card, and it explains what your student is learning at this time in the year and what the expectations are for your student at that grade level at this time in the year. It's available in multiple languages, and at the bottom we also have links and contact information, so if you want to learn more about any of these standards, there are several links to math, science, and language arts. We also have our own contact information if you'd like to reach me or any one of our facilitators. And finally, we've got a link at the bottom where you can give us feedback on this document. We've revised it recently and we want to know if it is serving its purpose. Is it making the report card come alive for you? Thank you for taking the time to listen to our presentation and learn a little bit more about the elementary report card.